What is going on, everybody? Hello, hello, hello. Through your phone screens, through your computer screens, it's I, Victor, not Andres, the more handsome of the two. Yes, good to see ya. And now we're going to be continuing this series that we have going called Identity. In the first 2 weeks that we've actually had a masterful word come from the Lord through Andres in the first 2 weeks about identity, is the idea of John 15:5, of him being the vine and us being the branch. Him being the underground foundation and us being what people see, right? Who we truly are. Now, identity is a crazy thing because it's essentially asking the question of who are we and why do we do what we do? I'm going to pick up where Andres very appropriately left off. And he actually used a good way of explaining it, with it being starting with the he. The he being the Lord, and in this scenario, we're going to say he's up, into the me, which is ourselves, the vine, the branch. And now today we're actually be going back into John 15:5, talking about the we. Yes, you at home, do this. And you did it? Okay, good. And when I'm talking about we, I'm talking about the people around us. You actually are part of a very important tribe. And in this tribe, you are a valued and, like I said, very important member where you have talents and gifts to share. These talents and gifts take the shape of fruit. And no, I'm not hungry either. I'm not talking about edible fruit. Let's go ahead and jump into John 15:5 so I can make a little bit more sense of the we. As you guys have already heard so far, I'm going to read again John 15:5. I am the branch and you I am the vine and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. This is where we're going to be spending all of our time, all right? If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Now, there's a few ways to look at this, and I actually have a different translation here than one of the words that's closer to the original Greek origin, which is abide. Now, you guys hear abide and start to cringe a little bit because you're like, he's telling me what to do. I have to abide and obey. And I know you guys may feel that because I feel that, which I've learned to really appreciate obeying, but that's not really what God's talking about here. The original Greek origin of the word abide has more to do to live in, to live for, to live in, and not do without. Now, if we use that context of you abiding in the Lord, you are living in Him. Now, that's part one of this part of the verse, right? Think of it like a cause and effect. When you abide in Him and then Him in you, there is you bearing fruit. To finish off the whole abiding section of that, He doesn't mean just abide to Him when you're by yourself. The Lord in this specific passage talk about abiding to Him in all places in life, in all places of your identity. When you're by yourself, which we talked a little bit about last week, but also when you're around others. He wants all of it. Now, there is a positive when you abide in Him, when you live in Him, when your life is completely soaked in Him, you bear these fruit. And like I made a very bad joke before, it's not talking about edible fruit, not bananas or oranges or whatever. And there's actually a really cringy song, like VBS song, that talks about the fruits of the Spirit that I won't play right now because I'm afraid I'd get banned from BlackRock for being too cringe. But I will tell you that it is in Galatians. And it talks about these specific things. That if when you abide and you stay in the Lord, you will show things like love, patience, gentleness, kindness, respect, self control. And all these things are what? Overarchingly good qualities. These are all things that you want to have if you want to be a decent person, let alone a follower of Christ. Now, when you live in God, you get those things. And let me contextualize that for you. Let me make it into an example that you can imagine. So I played a sport throughout high school and college called lacrosse, and it was a roller coaster for so many reasons. But one of the things that I took out of playing lacrosse at PBA, Go Sailfish, is I had a buddy named Daniel. Now, Daniel had gifts, man. He had this real gift for writing, this gift for reading. He loved literature. And it's funny, like I would read some of his stuff because I mean, I like to write too, but not as well as Daniel does. And I read his stuff and it's pieces of absolute artwork. They're good and he used to do it all the time. Once we started getting into the season, in the spring, the issue was our tribe. Now I bring that word back up again because when I talk about tribe, I'm talking about the tight knit community that you're surrounded by that either bring you up or push you down. They either help you cultivate your gifts and your fruits of the spirit, or in this scenario, there was a lot of really good guys on that team, but a large majority of them, or a fair amount, actually really like borderline bullied Daniel for reading. They bullied Daniel for writing these stories and poetry and stuff like that. And eventually he just stopped doing that stuff outside of his room. He wouldn't write. He wouldn't really read outside of his room. And he started to just be what everybody else in that locker room was. He allowed himself to change for those people. And worst of all, he knew those gifts that he had and he hid them away. He didn't allow them to grow. He didn't use them. He allowed his tribe at that time to make him have to bury all of the stuff that he held so dear that really were great ways of showing the Lord. He didn't have a proper tribe. He didn't have the tribe that we have. He didn't have a Rosetto tribe. And what I mean by Rosetto is I came upon this article one day called Outliers, and this really, really smart guy named Malcolm Gladwell was talking about this study that he did on this little tiny Italian village in the 1920s, early 1900s. Now, this is starting to sound like a history lesson, but just listen in for a second. The Rosetto people of that village lived until they were like 120, 130. I don't want to put it too bluntly, but like they just didn't die, at least not for a long time, and definitely outside of what was expected to be the standard age of living. And within those older people that lived there, even the ones that were 80 plus, they didn't have heart disease. They didn't have any diseases. These people were just living. They had this spiritual fruit, this gift of health. They even moved, some of them even moved, like 1930s or so, to Bangor, Pennsylvania. What up, Pennsylvania? Representing. I'm so mad that I did that. But they moved to this place in Pennsylvania. And the whole thing of them living and having this good health still maintained. Doctors around the world, around the United States, were like mind blown. They were mind blown. When they studied these people in Little Rosetto, Pennsylvania, like the little town that they made there, and they were wondering how are these people living so long, so healthily? And they figured the first thing had to be, they eat and their diet's different. Has to be. But actually, when they went and they like lived with the people there, they saw that they weren't eating any different. If anything, they were eating worse than they were before. In Italy, in Italia, they had much more, I want to use the word natural, not as genetically enhanced produce and ingredients. And now when they came to Pennsylvania, to America, they were using stuff like lard. So it wasn't diet. That's out. They figured it was exercise. Nobody there exercised. A lot of them were fairly obese actually, still with no diseases. What these doctors end up finding is that there were no other communities they could even imagine in the United States that was as tight knit, as vulnerable, as encouraging as the people of Rosetto Village. Rosetto Village. What does that mean? What does that mean for us? What does that mean for our tribe? I think that that means that we should be striving for that. We should be fighting for that. We should be encouraging others, but not in a way that you would think, not being like, you, friend, I'm pulling you up now like this, but we need to start way smaller because the smaller we start, the easier it is to do. We need to start noticing the good things in ourselves, like we talked about last week, but also the good things in others. What are these fruits that people have? What are these fruits that people are showing? Is there somebody with this spiritual gift for patience? Is there somebody with this spiritual gift of loving on others in a way that people don't know? If we're truly in a tribe, we need to, first of all, abide in the Lord and live by that every day, but also notice when somebody's doing that and tell them with your mouth holes. Tell them that they're exhibiting the fruits of the Spirit, because then those things will grow. Encourage them in that. Don't be like what the team did to Daniel. Don't be somebody that makes somebody ashamed of the gift that they were given from the Lord. Don't be somebody that makes them want to hide it, flourish it. Like you were talking about with he, me, and now we. The nutrients come from the vine. The branches are us. And for the fruit to grow, you need to cultivate that tree. So what are we doing to cultivate each other? I really want to challenge us. And not in a way of like, oh, I challenge you guys. I want you guys to truly think. If I was a part of a community, if I was a part of a family that builds me up, what would I look like? Who would I be? I don't want to say regular Saturday night, but back before all this craziness, think of that Saturday night. Who were you sitting with? What were you guys talking about? What were you saying? What were you doing? I'm going to hit you with a pretty hard question. Did you like who you were in that moment? I know plenty of times in my life I convinced myself that I was surrounded by the right tribe of people, and I did not like who I was. That's not what we're called to. It's not. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. I want to give you guys a sneak preview into next week, but focus on that first. What does it look like to abide? What does it look like to exhibit fruit? And what does it look like to be a part of a community, a we, that really champions that? Thank you guys. Peace.